But the nice thing about our industry and these smaller companies is that it's okay to not know everything and to ask for help. And that actually is how you get to know people on a different level, is when they can help teach you something, you learn from them, and then maybe down the road you're teaching them something that they don't know.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today our guest is Sammy Kolker with Matot Corporation. Sammy represents the fifth generation of family members to work at Matot, which is 135 years old this year, and she is pleased and honored to be part of this family legacy. Sammy loves what she is doing and is thriving in an environment where she can really bring value and express her creativity. Sammy also sees the necessity of inviting honesty and vulnerability into the workplace. And by taking mentorship seriously, she is growing while also helping those who come after her to thrive. So Sammy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to have you here, and obviously wanted to continue the conversation after we met out in Reno. And I want to start with one of my favorite questions, which tell me how you got involved in the elevator industry.
Well, I probably have a very similar answer to a large portion of the people in our industry, but I was born into it. Kind of grew up watching my mom and my aunt be the fourth generation in our family business. So we manufacture dumbwaiters. So we're a supplier for a lot of these elevator companies to install our dumbwaiters. So I just sort of grew up watching my mom and my aunt, being very close with my grandparents, who were the third generation, and just sort of like obsessed as if Matot, like another family member, like growing up, just always being like curious, running around the shop floor, wanting to work there during the summers, even if I was just like doing digital note taking.
So Thanksgiving dinner, you're talking about this person named Matot, is that right?
Yes, my cousin Matot. And so I came in during COVID on our sales and marketing team, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. So as a child, did you think, no way do I want to do that? Or, what was your thought?
It's funny because I didn't grow up like, oh, I want to be the president, I want to be a firefighter. I didn't really have like a specific dream of something that I wanted to do, but I always knew, honestly, around like 2008, I started to develop like a deeper care for Matot and like its success and making sure that it did well during the housing crisis. And it was just the first time that I had any fears for it. So I thought like, okay, if this is something that I actually care about, maybe it is something that I could have a future in. But I also really liked like fashion and creativity and designing and just creating anything. So I was like, how am I going to make this a duo that I can do for life? And as I started going through college and studying, I studied business and journalism. So I studied a little bit of family business and what it takes to start those and, function within those. I started to become more curious on like the actual business side of a family business. And then once I was out of college and working for large corporations, I really was like, okay, not only do I not care that much about these companies deep down, but I know they don't care about me.
Right.
So that
sure.
really helped me in my head be like, okay, this is a real viable option for me to go into. And it's something that I need to obviously think really hard about. And then COVID came at the perfect time for me to be like, cut ties with the corporate world.
Wow. Okay. So that's when you actually decided to join, was when COVID came and was wreaking havoc on most of the world.
Yeah, pretty much.
So and I'm guessing your business kept going because it was essential and needed to operate. And so you were able to join and just kind of make a smooth
I remember
transition.
My work was shutting down and basically we were all like, what's going to happen? But I drive back to my parents' house and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll be here for a bit, just hanging out. And I remember the first morning that 2-week shutdown was in order. And my mom was on the phone all day and she was like making sure that everyone had proper notices that they can come and that they wouldn't get in trouble. But they were determined to be a essential business right from the start. So they didn't have one single day closed down. We really didn't have any cases either of COVID. So we took major precautions around that. We added dividers between everyone. We staggered offices. We really kept all the office employees home for the most part. And then our essential workers down on the floor, they were not missing a beat with that. Everyone was in and we were all happy to be there. So that's when I was like, okay, wow, this is not only like something that is needed, but right now it's something that we're able to keep working through. And actually we're like busier than ever during that time.
Wow, that's incredible. So let's step back in time just a little bit. Tell me a little bit about how Matot started, how, what's the family story on all that?
So in 1888, my great grandpa, I believe, great grandpa Duffy was a wood fabricator. So we worked with wood and he was out here in Chicago and he was designing and fabricating basically ice boxes and ice houses for some of the old and original beer companies. So it was either in a big ice storage house or it was like a small box for like a saloon. They'd get their weekly delivery of like one large chunk of ice that they chiseled out all week. So that's sort of how they started. Early days, if you look at some of the photos, we were delivering everything on our horse and buggy. Everything was labeled like DA Matot. And the guys on the shop floor were wearing top hats, 3-piece sets, and monocle and the little like monocle glasses. So the photos are crazy. And then he was like, I love woodworking. What else can I make with wood? So there was no real like dumbwaiters at this time, but there was a need at this time to transport from like where the food is being prepared to where they're serving the diners, mostly like in old homes where they were entertaining people.
Or did they keep maybe they kept the ice down in the cellar? I don't know. And then
he identified a couple needs. He's like, let me just try to make this wooden box with a rope and you just pull it between floors. So that was like his original design, never patented it, but kept going with it. And then that became his prime focus for fabrication. And he just started working on developing the perfect dumbwaiter. And then as generations kept coming in, they started, working with steel. And as things started innovating in the manufacturing industry, that's when they were able to start innovating the product. So it's really always been dumbwaiters. We grew to like material lifts, other larger vertical reciprocating conveyors. So the basis of design though has pretty much been the same.
Wow. I remember seeing an old wooden dumbwaiter in Biltmore in North Carolina. And I don't, I wouldn't have thought at the time to look for your company brand on it, but I'm just wondering if you know whether that's a company product or not.
It probably was. If you see an old wooden dumbwaiter, it was probably one of ours. I'll have friends that text me photos. They'll be like at an old Airbnb turned bed and breakfast, and they're like, "Why is there a Matot wooden dumbwaiter pulling with rope?" I'm like, "That's crazy. Send us photos. If anyone's in the Chicago area, you can come see what the original ones look like. We have in our lobby, but they still are functional. People still have them."
Right. So one of the big tricks of family, businesses, especially multi-generational, as I understand it, is just kind of the handoff from generation to generation. I think C. Bruce McKinnon said it best. He said that, the first generation makes it, second generation takes it, third generation breaks it. But you've obviously moved beyond that. And so I'm curious, what are some of the family dynamics that you've seen when it comes to not just generationally, but even between siblings? I mean, you mentioned your mom and her sister run it. I mean, are there other siblings? Are there issues around that? Just love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, I think early on, I think it's very helpful. Obviously, there's so many pros and cons to family business, but it really, when you're young and you're growing up in that atmosphere of family business and all your family lives within a 10-minute drive of one another, you're spending every single weekend together and they're spending every single day together. Right. They are developing their own like business communication between each other that I think they learn how to and how to not do from the generation before them. So I think, and it makes sense why the third generation breaks it. It's really hard when you're the one that starts at first generation and it's your baby. And there's so much that's tied into that, that's based off your own creative endeavors and your own blood, sweat, and tears. And the second generation, I think, is pretty respectful of that and grew up watching that so closely and in the world in which they created it, that if they do decide to step in, they're pretty much keeping in line with the goals and the vision that their predecessor had. So it makes sense to me that it's then that third generation that maybe there's a little entitlement, or maybe there's a little, oh, it's a family business, it's an option for me to step into. When really, I think that after you get past that third generation where there's not as much tie so closely to the creators of the brand and the products, that you can now start making it your own vision. And I think that's where, once you pass the third generation, there's not as much pressure to just keep it the same as what it was and to hold so true to the values of that creator. And you can honor those, but you can also learn from them, because,
Right.
there's ways now, obviously with the digital age, that they weren't able to use or have within their repertoire to create and market and just keep innovating their products. So I think that it's helpful to grow up as the world is growing up in family business and to just
Right.
use new technologies. But really, I think learning from the past communication mistakes of family and being like, okay, I've watched my mom and my aunt have little bickers, but I do watch them really pull together and have good communication when it comes down to it, because they know that there's so much more than just like their egos that are on the line
Right.
with this.
Right.
And especially, I think that it's two women that I'm learning and growing from. I think maybe there's of course going to be differences when it's, maybe it was my grandpa and there was boys in the mix, and you want to think that, like, the man will take over, but it really can be different when there's women involved, especially in the manufacturing world. I think they weren't necessarily always taken that serious. I remember I was just at dinner with my grandma this weekend, and she's always ranting about all the things that she brought into the business. And she wasn't really taken seriously at first. She came
Sure.
in sort of to do some bookkeeping, and she ended up really providing so much more for the company. And I think a
Sure.
lot of that was that interpersonal connection that maybe wasn't there, that then my aunt and my mom really attached to and learned from. So now our generation, luckily, we do honestly have like NexGen and other resources and mentors, and there's more things in place for us, at least, that we've learned from. Like, okay, if a family member's coming in, they need to work 3 years out of the business. They need to have a mentor coming in that's outside from the
Right.
Loyola School of Business. So I think they've learned from things that they've done, and they want to implement them so that it's not so much like mom and aunt said so. There's
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
voices
Yeah.
that are looking at the way you're behaving and conducting yourself and are thinking like, okay, this is what's going to work and this what isn't going to work. And maybe sometimes
Yeah.
they'll tell you you're not going to work. And
Right.
if
Right.
you
Which
love
is
the
a hard
company,
conversation, right? I can't imagine just how difficult that is. But I think your aunt told me that she had to fire her brother. Probably
mhm,
she and your mom probably had to fire
yeah,
their brother at some point.
yeah. And that's really hard, because that's obviously where I think a lot of the cons of family business come in, because, there's so much love, but there's also another side of that when you don't feel that love, and it just can bleed into every other aspect of your life. So I myself coming in, and I think my cousins and my siblings have the perspective that there's so much fragility with how you handle things,
Sure.
and such a ripple effect with emotionally how you handle things,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we're all hyper aware of it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you tell me a little bit more about mentorship, because in our previous conversations, you had mentioned like formal and informal, and some of these things you've learned as a family and as a company that have really helped raise the bar, but also, yeah, it sounds like it really helped your family kind of draw together with better communication and better, just, the way you, yeah, get along.
Yeah, I don't know what sort of things they had in place before my grandparents in terms of mentorship. I don't think a whole lot. But when my parents' generation was coming in, so the fourth generation, the Loyola School of Business was creating a sector for family business and advising on that. And my grandparents were friends with a couple of the people that were starting that. And they said, could we use you guys sort of as a case study? Can we start conducting some of our research and implementation with you guys and see how this would look, as a
Oh,
sector of our
wow.
family
So they came
business?
to you and said, hey, we want to bring this to you.
Yeah. And I think
Nice.
my grandparents were excited about it, but also obviously, that decision came with a lot of other hard decisions that they had to make that affect their family unit, which, like, you can make a decision in business that usually doesn't affect your family. but
Right.
it's so much more sensitive. So I think that they were excited to have an outside fresh set of eyes come in. So they really came in and they sat down with everyone. They watched, listened, learned, made a couple big asks for changes if they, wanted to keep their opinion going with us. So now I came in with a mentor. Her name was Julie. She was awesome. We spent the first year of me coming in every month, either in person meeting or on Zoom meeting. And we would do personality assessments. We would just talk about like the struggles that come with it
So Julie,
and all
sorry
the
to interrupt,
hardships.
is
Mhm.
she's with the Loyola School, correct?
Yeah,
And so
she had her own practice,
okay.
Ironside. So she basically was like a contractor for them. So they would recommend people. I actually spoke to when I decided and I told our president, like, I'm coming in, I'm ready. He gave me a list of people. I chatted with them and I really resonated the most with her. I felt like she could give me the best feedback and she'd be the perfect mentor for me to start with.
So this is it wasn't just your grandparents and your parents, but this has been going on for how many years now?
They've probably been working with them for at least 20 to 30 years,
Wow.
probably a little bit more than 30 years. Same program that's been running with this for us. So, and we use them for a lot of other things too, but
Sure.
I would say that this has been the most I've been impacted. But she would just take me through every little thing that I should expect. And I would just have someone that was obviously, removed from the situation, but that was a professional within this industry that I could maybe bounce some of my hesitancies off of.
Right.
Because I'm sure if you talk to any kid coming into the family business, they have probably the same fear, which is like just being taken seriously and wanting to make it known that you're there to work and you don't want to just be treated like the owner's kid. And
Right.
so that was a lot of work that you do with your mentors. Like, why do you feel that way? How can you combat that? What are you doing actively to get to know people on a different level? So she was extremely involved in that first year for me, which is always, I think, the rockiest year in just finding your place and how
Right.
you're being perceived by others and what you're showing them.
Yeah. Well, and you said, being known as the owner's kid. I mean, at some point you have to show up and contribute to the business. And if you don't, it doesn't matter if you're the owner's kid, you're going to have to leave because you're not. And that's got to be the hardest part is, okay,
Mhm.
you're always a part of our family. But if you don't perform for the business, you will not be part of the business. And
Right.
it's got to be super challenging to.
And I was aware of that. And I sort of said to my family before, I'm like, if I'm not a good fit, like you don't need to let me down easily. Just tell me. And I will walk away. And it's not anything for me to just expect like it's going to be given to me.
Right.
Like I really genuinely wanted to earn it. And if I felt like they felt like I was providing a value culturally, business wise, marketing wise, doing things we hadn't done before, if I felt like they were seeing value in me, then I would want to stay. But I don't want to be anywhere where I'm a nuisance or just there
Sure.
because our name is on the door. That was probably my biggest fear the first year. So that mentorship was really important. And then I was working closer with my aunts in the marketing department. So I probably briefly met you my first trip in Tucson right after COVID. And that was my first trip for the
Yeah.
NAEC.
Yep.
And she was on the board of the NAEC at the time. So it was really amazing going through all that with her and just having someone that can introduce me to people. And I think I probably would have come in a little bit more timid and quiet if I didn't have her, but I probably came in the opposite. And that was around the same time that NexGen was sort of having its resurgence. So utilizing that. And then I would also say business wise that our president, Jim, is probably my biggest like business mentor at this point
Right.
because I'm studying the things that he's doing and the vision that he has with the business. And I just always feel really heard by him and we have a really good relationship with that. So I think that will probably be like my most long-term mentor in a way.
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, I love the way it sounds like you've got formal, you've got informal, you've got kind of this outside influence from the university, which has got to be huge. But it
Mhm.
sounds like as a whole, as a company, you've kind of adopted this, hey, we are going to mentor each other. And people don't, I guess, somebody doesn't have to tell me to do it. It's just, it becomes part of culture. It's ingrained in. And I'm curious if you could put I don't know, just how valuable is that? And I don't know how to quantify that, but, um, does it come down to, well, we probably wouldn't be in business still if my grandparents hadn't taken this on and done this? Or I'm just curious if you could speak
I
to that.
think it's all about creating like a place that you'd want to be in business for. Maybe we would have stayed in business if we didn't carry on those things and try to incorporate just strong communication and really hear each other. But I don't think anyone would have wanted to stick around and keep bringing kids in and giving it an option for our family to maybe, have issues.
Right.
We're opening a door to have more possible issues than regular
Sure.
families would face. So I think that it's our communication and learning from the past and just talking and having great relationships is the most important thing, because that's like all anything really is worth. Enjoying
Right.
it. We live to work, but we work to live. So if we can do it with the people we love and we're happy doing it, and if there's little things that maybe I do that annoy a cousin or an aunt, I'd rather they vocalize that so that they can have the best experience. We can bring the most positive atmosphere for people, because if you're not getting along with family, everyone else is going to feel it.
Sure.
It creates a really toxic environment. Everyone has seen it happen in some way. So I think honestly, it just creates a work environment worth being excited to go into. And I never used to get excited to go to work. I never wanted to talk about work. The weekends were the weekends. I would shut off after 5 p.m. But
Right.
it's just a different level of like love and care for what I'm doing. And I get to like have long conversations with my grandparents where we get to talk about things that most child grandparent relationships don't have. And we have such a different, deeper level of connection. And like my grandpa and I can sit on the phone for, after I'll go to like Reno, I'll call my grandpa and just tell him all the people that are there that he'd remember, all the new things. And it's just created such a special connection that I never would have thought I'd be able to have. And then I get to go back to some of the guys on our shop floor that worked with my grandparents
Sure.
that are now 40 plus years in with our company, that have their
Yeah.
siblings in our business. We have 3 brothers on the floor. We have father's sons on the floor. So I get to bring back, blurbs and news from my grandparents, how much they miss the guys and thoughts that they have. So it really makes like my family, our company's family.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we've just like, it's been a really positive experience for me.
That's awesome. I mean, and I'm thinking a couple things as you're saying that. One is that I get the impression that every company, if they really love and care about their employees, you know, should adopt something like that, just to create that connection, the communication, because I do see toxic cultures, and I've worked in toxic cultures.
Yeah.
And the other thing that comes to mind is it almost feels like, I've got a family, extended family. It's like whether we work together or not, it would be really cool to have a mentorship program just to teach us how to be better family members. So
Yeah. We should all have a mentor and be a mentor at some point.
yeah, that's really cool. I love the way that you're excited to be there, and that it's created that kind of open culture that really does feed into the family, and like you say, the kind of the extended family that is your company.
Yeah.
So
And I would be excited to one day be able to provide that for someone else, whether it's like my younger sister or my younger cousin or just someone younger that's come in the business. Like I would be so excited to be able to do what people have done for me and to bring my own things that I've, learned along the way, and just what I feel like where the industry is moving towards and how you can really get on board and start being a part of that.
right, right. So I'm gonna shift gears for a second. You had talked about, when you came on board, you'd done more kind of creative work and where do I fit in? Tell me a little bit more about how you've been able to bring your own expression to this company, because it sounds like, as you were looking at it from the outside, a dumbwaiter, I'm like, how creative can you be?
Yeah. It looked a little rigid from the outside. It looked
Right.
a little like, okay, I'll fit in a box there and I'll be, our sales rep or something. And honestly, I have a marketing background too. So I was like, where can I bring, like you said, any level of creativity into
Sure.
this? And then for my first initial idea is obviously creativity in terms of marketing our history and like that amazing story and the photos and everything that we have there. But I think there's a lot of room. And that's why I think there's some exciting like careers and new shifts that could be coming into this industry, because obviously our industry needs marketing, like people need to market their products. But I think that what's becoming exciting is that there's new creative ways to market them. And if you are creative and you want to make these things from scratch and just have these ideas, you can really make them come true and be really different. So I remember first coming in, I sort of just like watched, even honestly, these booths and these shows that we do yearly, people don't realize how much creative control and creative processes goes into it, because you're really given like a split second to show someone who you are, what you have, what you do. Are they interested in walking up and meeting you or not? And it really does come down to that creativity. And most people like don't really think about that. They put their logo up. A lot of companies do think really creatively about how to showcase and get people's attention. So I think that it's like an underappreciated little niche part of our industry, because people don't necessarily think like, oh, we need to go get talent that's creative. But it does go so far in marketing your product. And then I just started to think internally of it too, because I love creating things for people that will make them excited about work and making them excited about the company that they're working for. So I remember even I just started small, like I made these little trucker hats, like they were really cute to me and I was really obsessed with them. And, I gave them to everyone in our company. I had friends starting to wear them. And then people were asking me like, what is Matot? What's this hat? Can I get one? I'm like, you want a dumbwaiter hat? Sure. And I was like, okay, wait, we can create things that like can go anywhere with this product. You don't need to just like market to the people that are buying from us and installing our products. So then I was like, okay, we can make some fun things that people can wear. And there's so many fun spins that you can put on something that's like so silly and simple. And then I started just getting excited to create things for like business. Like this was our 135th year anniversary. So we had a massive pig roast for all of our employees this year. I was able to, and that's another reason that I love like my relationship with Jim Piper, our president, because I just come with all these crazy ideas and I'm like, can I make this smoking pig on fire 70-inch banner? And can I put another one across that's all hot pink and red and really girly? And he's like, sure. And he just gives me a very long leash creatively to do that stuff. And then I feel so fulfilled doing both the things that maybe you look at and they're sort of like rigid, black and white, to the book, sales quotes and orders and processes. But then I get to also like create newsletters for our company and make fun parties and, make new merch for us. So there are a lot of ways, if you're creative, that you can get involved, even if you're already involved and you don't do anything creatively. And then if you want to come in and you're creative, like we always say at all of our NexGen and NAEC events, like there is so much money for people to make. There's so many opportunities for people to have. And it's not just like if you're good at manufacturing and you have an engineering brain, you can really be coming from a creative world, a digital marketing world, something that is not adjacent with elevators. And you can come in and do something so awesome. And I think that's where this next generation is kind of taking us and making it like a little more creatively interesting.
So tell me, you've mentioned NexGen a couple times, but tell the listeners a little bit more about, you mentioned it kind of got kicked off anew and in Tucson. And I was there. That was like my first NAEC event. And so I didn't know it was kind of coming back. I just, this thing that has probably been going on. But so let's talk a little bit about what it is and how that is kind of driving your development as a professional in the industry.
So I was in the same boat as you for Tucson. I came in blind. I'm like, oh, there's like a little NexGen thing. That'll be interesting. Like I might as well stay and go to some of those seminars and get to know these people. And just from this like very first day that I was there, I was like, whoa, this is actually like seriously something that is going to be helpful and awesome for me, just because like it was a tiny group of us that first trip. And it's just a place that on the emotional side, you get to share like the challenges and the positives and either being a family business or being a next generation leader in your business. Like you don't have to be a relative or in the
Right.
family to be a part of it. So I think it's like we're all coming from these same struggles and we all are sort of starting to formulate the same vision and dreams for what we want, not only our roles in our companies to look like, but our industry to look like. And we'll have speakers from, you know, presidents of companies and people that have been really, really established in what they do. And then we'll have roundtable discussions and we talk about what they brought to the table. And so we started slow, I would say. We would have like little luncheons or happy hours after NAEC events. And then this year we had our first standalone NexGen trip. So we went to Nashville in the spring and it was really awesome. I think all of us went in like, what are we about to spend the next 3 days doing? And it was such a great, not only learning place for us to really educate on like new things. And we all come in with different areas of expertise. Like we had Joe from Champion give a financial report, and some of us aren't on the financial side of our business. So to get sort of a broad look at what they're working on and just little things that you can start implementing, it's like, oh, maybe I should pay closer attention to things like that.
How does somebody get involved in NextGen? You mentioned you don't have to be a family member. What do you have to be? I guess, in the elevator industry, but can someone just sign up, or do they need their boss to kind of, you know, say, okay, you are sponsored, or what does that look like?
Well, sort of like that. I mean, like you said, you do not have to be a family member. You do have to be in the NAEC, and then you do sort of need your boss or someone to give you the go ahead because you're going to be going on trips. You're going to be a part of this, so they do need to sign off on you to be a part. But if you want to just start slow and like dip your toes in, send Nick Dalvano, a message. He's at Always in New York. You can send me a message to put you in contact. So just to start getting like in our group me, which is active, and someone's like, oh, does anyone have an old serial diagram from this old job board that I can't find? And it's just like in those ways, it's a good hub center for questions like that. And then if you want to even start small too, you can go to luncheons during the conventions. You can go to the happy hours and stuff. You don't need to really fully be invested at that point. And I would say just reaching out to someone that is a part of it will get you in contact. But it really is if you are in the NAEC at all and you're under 40, there's no reason not to be a part of it. You're already getting like all the tools, and you're getting the seminars, you're getting the conventions of what the NAEC offers, but then it's a whole nother layer, especially if you're under 40, you're on track for leadership. Being a part of that community is like the community for coming up in this.
Right. And I have heard, that a lot of people talk about that if you want leadership, even if you're starting your own business, right, just having a network is so critical. So I think it's the same with leadership. If you're going to be taking over a business, having a network of people that you can trust and reach out to and ask questions, and it's very valuable.
And I think too, our generation's sort of been like branded the like, I'm afraid of being on the phone, I'd rather not be in group settings. Like we're being branded that. But as soon as you like go to something like this, you're like, okay, we're all the same. We're not doing it the way that they wanted to. We're doing it our own way,
Right.
But we're still showing up and we're doing this, and we're getting together with people. We're forming communities, but we're doing it the way that we want to do it,
Right. Well, in the last generation, I mean, GroupMe didn't exist when I was a youngin', right? So you're using tools that just weren't around. So, it's probably more effective because you know how to use those tools.
Right. And they're making it interesting for us learning wise, and they're making pretty diverse education for us. Like I said, like we'll have a financial planning, and then like we'll have Freddie Flores do like like what he brings to marketing and how he remembers people. And if someone tells him something about their family life, about their personal life, you remember that, and then you follow up with that. And that's
right.
How to be successful at those like conventions, at conferences, which could be like overwhelming, especially if you're not like big on talking to people and getting to know people. Like there are little things that you could do that we talk about to make yourself more comfortable at big industry events like that.
Right. Well, and I've found that just being there, saying hi, talking to people, I mean, it gets more comfortable. I think my first one, I was a little nervous. I felt like an outsider, and yet no one there thought of me as an outsider. They were willing to
Same.
talk. They were willing to, it's like, hey, good to meet
Same. I
you.
was like, no one asked me any technical questions.
Exactly. I guess a couple more questions before we wrap up. I'm curious, what would you say is the biggest challenge, the most difficult thing you've had to kind of learn or wrap your brain around since joining the industry? And then let's start with that one, and then I'll give you the last one.
I think there's probably the technical side and then the culture side. Technically, I'm definitely not an engineer. I was not gifted with that engineering brain. So I can't really look at something and be like, oh, that's exactly how you put it together. These are all the components that are needed. So I had to spend every single Monday for 10 hours for the first few months on our shop floor in a different station,
Wow.
just watching a single weld all day, him doing this. And I was like, okay, let me build this like Legos and build this in my mind how it'll work for me. So the technical part is challenging, and
Sure.
if you're not technical, don't let it deter you from coming in, because you can learn it ways that work for you. If it means like having little drawings of what it looks like and definitions for that part, I've done that too. So it's okay to not have that technical ability. It's okay to not have the physical ability to make the product yourself.
Sure.
So I had to be like, okay, I'm not going to be able to go and weld this. I know I'm not going to be bringing that to the table. I know I'm not going to be bringing any engineering mindset to the table. So what do I have? What skills can I bring to the table? And how do I really up those within our industry? And that's where, for the marketing, that creative side came out, and what can I bring culture wise? And then obviously our sales, which I was in corporate sales before. So kind of bringing that into a smaller business and into manufacturing was interesting. And then, like we talked about, which a lot of kids and a lot of people in NexGen struggle with, which is coming into a culture. I mean, it's like Nepo babies are the word of the century. Like, in some ways, we're these Nepo babies that are coming in, and you might have a couple people having some opinions, and it's really your job to let them get to know you on a different
Sure.
ground that's not just being the Nepo baby, and really actually caring about them and getting to know them and why they're there and what makes them tick and what are their motivations and how can you bring that into your leadership style when that does come. So all in all, the struggles make it easy, and you can talk to people that are better than that stuff at you. Like, I'll go to engineering, I'm like, write this down like you're talking to a third grader. And that's okay with them.
Sure. Well, at least, I mean, knowing what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, like I say, you can go to engineering, you can have them, bring it down and explain. And you don't need to be all things to all people, but what you do bring, you can have a blast doing that, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I think that if you're like in a big corporate world, you sort of have to pretend, and there's that imposter syndrome. But the nice thing about our industry and these smaller companies is that it's okay to not know everything and to ask for help. And that actually is how you get to know people on a different level, is when they can help teach you something, you learn from them, and then maybe down the road you're teaching them something that they don't know. So it's just being like open to learning. And I think our generation's so open to learning, but is so like hyped about the things that they can bring in and all of the ideas that they have. So I think it's a really cool combination of the two.
Very cool. Very cool. So the last question I have for you is what advice would you give to somebody, maybe they're new to the industry, maybe they aren't even sure where to start? What would you tell them?
I would say both in the company and outside the company that they're coming into. In the company, it's always nice to determine people that you're like-minded with, that you can get along with, and sort of like find your work friends and your work life and getting comfortable with that. But I also think it's important to get a little uncomfortable at times and like maybe reach out to people that you don't have a ton in common with. And I think cultivating a different level of comfortability in your office place will help make you feel like you have a place there, especially if you're coming in from outside of the manufacturing and outside of the elevator industry. It might feel like you're like tiptoeing in a door that you're not supposed to be in, but everyone is supposed to be there if you want to be there. So in your company, I think just getting to know the people really well and find out how you can bring some of your outside creativity or outside skills in and really like present it in the way that you would want to show it. Like maybe make up a mock little draft of how you market your product differently, and everyone would be impressed by that. And then getting involved in the industry, obviously, like I said, reach out to me or Nick or anyone that you know that's in NexGen. Of course, attend as much as you can with that. Within every city, there's other companies that are like yours. And for the most part, they all network and work together. You know, like we have the CEA, so we'll get together. You know, I went to a mostly all male golf outing this summer. And that was the second time I ever golfed in my entire life. And it was like a 6-hour golf day. And it was very outside of my comfort box, but I knew I would meet people and they would get to see a different side of me and I would see a different side of them, people that I'm emailing with and selling to and, you know, having phone conversations with. So I think just like do things that are outside your comfort zone, but just communicate to people that you're wanting to get to know, what you want to bring to the table, and maybe they can help you in ways that you honestly wouldn't think.
Awesome. Sammy, this has been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure too.
Awesome. Well, I wish you the very best and we'll see you at the next conference.
Yeah, I will see you at the next conference.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.